Putin is deadly serious about confronting the West, and the use of nuclear weapons should not be ruled out, a former U.S. ambassador has warned. Frank G. Wisner, who served under President Bill Clinton, lashed out at Putin and described the Russian tyrant as extraordinarily reckless. As Volodymyr Zelensky campaigns for more fighter jets, ammo and drones in his bid to bolster support from the West, it's feared that fresh reinforcements could send Vlad into an unpredictable spiral. The U.S. House has now approved $49 billion, $61 billion, in military aid to strengthen Ukraine's 600-mile front line. The Ukraine president hailed it as a monumental decision that keeps history on the right tracks, after the package was stalled for 6 months by Republican hardliners. With near impunity, Moscow has exploited that delay, pounding Ukraine's cities and critical infrastructure and exhausting its air defense arsenal. But with a new wave of military aid, replenishing ammo and restocking exhausted weapon supplies, Vlad's forces could soon be on the back foot once more. Speaking to The Sun, U.S. Ambassador Frank G. Wisner warned a nuclear attack by Russia on the West should not be ruled out. Frank served as a U.S. ambassador to India, the Philippines, Egypt, and Zambia, under several presidents including Bill Clinton and George Bush Sr. He described Vlad as a reckless leader, first in the invasion of Ukraine, and second in the threats that he's deployed surrounding this invasion of Ukraine, including the threat of nuclear warfare. Frank added, at the same time, I have to balance his threats against reality. He's signed up his military in a war with Ukraine. How much does he have left over to fight a broader conflict? There's some limitations, Russian military capacity to say the least. But is he capable of accelerating or expanding the war? Yes. Could he do so with unconventional means like a nuclear weapon? It's not to be ruled out. Recently, the grieving widow of Alexei Navalny, Putin's #1 foe, claimed unpredictable Putin was ready to use nuclear weapons. She warned that the power-hungry president wanted to keep the world living in fear, and nobody knows what Putin is going to do next. Military experts also warned that the Russian tyrant would sacrifice everything and could even launch a nuclear weapon into orbit if he felt his iron grip was slipping. But if things swing in Ukraine's favor, it's feared erratic Vlad could hit the nuclear button and spark the beginning of WW3. Franks explains that any type of nuclear attack, even a smaller tactical nuke strike, would have huge consequences for all of us. But he believes Putin's threat could all be bravado in a bid to show the Russian population he is serious about taking on the West. He said, "Nuclear warfare, even limited nuclear warfare, has huge consequences. They would be extremely painful for Russia, not to mention the rest of us. So I'm not sitting up at night believing he's about to launch limited nuclear attacks on the West. I don't see that. I think it's mainly as a warning to the West about the extent of our support for Ukraine. And it's a signal to the Russian population that he's deadly serious about confronting the West, to the point of threatening nuclear warfare." Following in the steps of his predecessors, Frank believes Putin enjoys the exercise of power. Over the last few months, we have seen him storm to a landslide victory in his slam Russian elections, as well as wiping out his #1 enemy, Navalny. Former Ambassador Wisner said, Putin believes the nature of Russia is to have strong, centralized, personalized rule by a powerful leader, and that he is the heir of this ancient tradition of strong, personalized rule. So he has no problem carrying on. He enjoys the exercise of power, and he thinks that exercise is in line with the traditions of Russian history. Because of this, Frank believes Putin will be around to make threats against the West for the foreseeable, but warned that if support for Ukraine from Western governments were to stop, we could see the war end in as little as 6 months. Frank said, "I have learned over a lifetime in diplomacy and observation of world affairs, don't predict timelines. I don't see any immediate challenge to Putin's rule of Russia, but then there are many surprises in store for all of us. I cannot predict the end of the Ukraine war unless I predict the collapse of Western support for the government of Ukraine and its military effort. If the latter should happen, which would be horrific in its consequences, then I think the war could come to the end one way or another reasonably quickly, 6 months or so." not because of the capacity or will of the Ukrainian people to resist Russian aggression, but the physical capability to conduct that resistance. If Russia were to meet its chilling objectives in neighboring Ukraine, Western security would be under serious threat.